Over the course of 1,000 years, the ebb and flow of the Habsburg family's power defined the course of European history. And while the Austro-Hungarian Empire's days are over, the family's Roman Catholic faith is still represented by Eduard Habsburg, the Hungarian ambassador to the Vatican. Appointed in 2015 when Hungary found itself the butt of criticism from Pope Francis over its response to the migration crisis, Eduard had an unorthodox background for being a diplomat, having previously worked as a cartoon producer, novelist and writer of zombie movies. He's since become something of a social media personality, his trenchant, socially conservative commentary earning him over 60,000 followers on Twitter. I'm delighted to say that Ambassador Habsburg joins me live from Rome. Welcome to GB News. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me on your Sunday show, Michael.
Tell me, Ambassador, why does a country have an ambassador to the Vatican?
Well, if I was only the ambassador to the Vatican, I would be an ambassador to a tiny little state within a state. But I'm the ambassador to the Holy See and to the Holy Father. And the Holy Father is the head of 1.3 billion people worldwide. So that is something else. I also have the feeling that right now, Pope Francis is probably one of the strongest moral voices in the world. And in times of conflict, this is a man you want to be close to and be in dialogue with. And that's why the last 8 years that I've been ambassador here have been very exciting. Yes.
Well, would you give me, please, a little potted history of those 8 years, or possibly just a tiny bit more? Let's go back to just before you were appointed, when Pope Francis was critical of Hungary's actions vis-à-vis the migration crisis. Tell me about those criticisms and tell me how relations have developed since, particularly since you've been ambassador.
Well, first of all, I was present in 2015, in the summer of 2015, during the migration crisis, when up to 10,000 migrants, illegal migrants, crossed the Hungarian border, thus entering the Schengen area without passports and any controls. So Hungary, of course, felt obliged to build a fence in order to control these people. And that was the same time when Pope Francis began saying things like people who build fences against migrants and refugees are not Christian. So you can imagine that I had to hit the floor running when I arrived in Rome in summer 2015, and then later on was received by Pope Francis. I think it was very important from the beginning, and this is something that I suggest to anybody, to carefully read what the Pope actually says. First of all, he's a Jesuit and a South American Jesuit. So don't suppose you know what he thinks, and don't suppose you know what he said unless you've read it, because many people sort of have an idea of the thought of Pope Francis by looking at the headlines in newspapers. But diplomats spend a lot of time of really reading and dissecting statements, interviews, speeches of the Pope. And you can tell that his position on migrants is far more balanced than most people would at first view see. For instance, Pope Francis said things like, a country that is not sure that it can integrate migrants should think well about accepting them. Pope Francis also said that migrants who arrive in a new place have to respect the values of the country where they are arriving. Pope Francis also said that the state has a right to sovereignty and to borders. And also one of the things he said that is very strong part of Hungarian policy in the Middle East and other places is the right to remain. Pope Francis strongly encourages countries to help people remain so they don't have to move out of their country with the help of human traffickers to get to Europe. All of this led to conversations with the Holy See, led to many dialogues, and in the end, I think, has led to a very, very good relationship with the Holy See. Pope Francis has visited our country twice in 3 years, which is not a normal thing to do. Many people are astounded about that. I understand why he does it. Hungary is great.
I think people in Britain will be quite interested with the exposition that you've given of the Pope's positions about migration. To come to a bottom line, do you personally and does your government believe that building the fences back in 2015 was right? And are you saying that you've led the Pope to conclude that it was right?
To your first question, yes. Hungary, as a conservative country, has the luxury not having to change their positions every few months. Hungary has been saying the same thing since years, and we're still saying it. No, I don't think that I have convinced the Pope of anything. The maximum that I think that I may have done is to show through my friendly, open, and charming ways that Pope Francis sees that Hungary can't be that bad if their ambassador is so nice. I think some of that, but it's not all about migrants. Pope Francis likes Hungary for different reasons. If you look at the way he talked and behaved when he was in Hungary, he, for instance, made a strong critique of gender ideology that you didn't find any trace of in Western media after his speech. He did it in a prominent speech in front of Hungarian political leaders because he knows about our politics for families, etc., etc. So it's not just all about migration. There is far more. And Pope Francis seems to really like the Hungarians. He just dropped a few hints about the way he had good relations with Hungarians over decades before he decided to come. So it's not all the ambassador's fantastic work, but of course I'm trying to make that impression at home.
Tell me a bit about your role as a social influencer. 60,000 followers or more. What sorts of things are you talking about? Let me just pluck an example. Are you talking about abortion?
That's a difficult topic. I'm a diplomat, so I usually don't go for controversial topics. I usually try to find common ground. Most people would define my tweets as wholesome. Some more conservative followers of mine would sometimes say that I shouldn't be so milquetoast, but that's what diplomats do. But I will say that I have an interesting mix of family, faith, Hungary, monster movies, and sometimes current multimedia, internet, Twitter, debate stuff. I try to engage. Although I became a grandfather 3 weeks ago, I feel rather young and in with the times when it comes to Twitter and social media. And I'm still in the lucky position that I can still react to people reaching out to me. I can read all the responses to my tweets, and I often interact with people. I enjoy this very much. It's a way of doing soft diplomacy internationally. I would say that more than half or even 2/3 of the people that follow me are from the English-speaking world. Quite a few from the States, of course, I think. But I suppose also quite a lot of followers from England. And that's the mix that I went for.
Very good. Well, may I join you in saying that, of course, you are very, very charming, and you've been so charming as to join us on GB News in the middle of the day on a Sunday. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you, Ambassador Habsburg.